Alright guys, today we're diving deep into one of the most intense crime thrillers of 2026. The Rip. This is not just another cop movie. This is a story about loyalty, corruption, brotherhood, betrayal. And what happens when the line between justice and greed completely disappears. Starring Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Sasha Calle, Teyana Taylor, Yeun, and Scott Adkins, this film delivers raw tension, layered characters, and a slow-burning explosion that hits hard in the final act. So grab your coffee, because we're breaking down the entire movie, scene by scene. Movie camera opening scene. The calm before the storm. The film opens with a quiet, haunting shot of Miami at dawn. Police sirens echo in the distance. The city feels alive, but restless. We're introduced to Lieutenant Danny Malone, Matt Damon. He's a veteran police lieutenant, respected, calm, and known for being by the book. He's the kind of cop who believes in procedure and loyalty to the badge. But something feels off. He's tired. Not physically, emotionally. At home, his marriage is distant. His teenage son barely speaks to him. His life revolves around work. Meanwhile, across town we meet J.D. Byrne, Ben Affleck. J.D. is Danny's closest friend. Practically a brother. They came up through the academy together. J.D. is charismatic, confident, but far more impulsive. He believes results matter more than rules. Already you can feel the contrast. Danny equals control. J.D. equals instinct. Danny equals rules. J.D. equals results. And that difference is going to tear everything apart. Briefcase. The setup, a routine raid. The inciting incident begins with a routine narcotics operation. Detective Numa Rodriguez, Teyana Taylor, and Detective Mike Shin, Yeun, uncover intel about a cartel stash house. The operation is supposed to be simple. Break in, arrest suspects, secure drugs, file paperwork. But when Danny's team storms the warehouse, they find something unexpected. No drugs, no people, just a hidden compartment in the floor. Inside, $18 million in unmarked cash. No tracking numbers, no federal seals, no record of it existing. Just stacks and stacks of cartel money. And in that moment, everything changes. Moneybag. The moral dilemma. The team gathers inside the warehouse. J.D. looks at the money. He says something chilling. This isn't evidence. This is a ghost. According to official intel, the warehouse was abandoned. No paperwork mentions the money. No one knows it exists. If they report it, it goes into federal seizure. If they don't, no one would ever know. The room goes silent. Danny immediately says they report it. But the others hesitate. Rodriguez argues. We risk our lives every day. The system doesn't care about us. Mike Shin stays quiet, calculating. J.D. pushes further. You think internal affairs has never done this? You think politicians don't? Slowly, temptation spreads like poison. Danny walks out. But the seed has been planted. Brain internal conflict. That night, Danny can't sleep. He stares at his house. One mortgage payment away from foreclosure. His son needs college tuition. Meanwhile, we see flashbacks of him turning down bribes years earlier. He was once idealistic. Now, he feels forgotten. J.D. visits him late at night. He lays out a plan. Split 6 ways. $3 million each. Clean it through shell companies. No one gets hurt. And then J.D. drops the final blow. We've given this city everything. What has it given us? Danny doesn't answer. But he doesn't say no. Fire the decision. The next day, the report filed says, warehouse cleared. No assets recovered. The money disappears. And just like that, the rip begins. Detective Act 2. Consequences. Weeks pass. First, everything seems fine. Danny invests carefully. J.D. buys a new boat. Quietly. Rodriguez helps her struggling mother. Shin moves money overseas. But then, a cartel lieutenant named Desi Alvarez, Sasha Calle, appears. He's cold, strategic, terrifyingly intelligent, and she knows the money was taken. The cartel doesn't care about drugs. They care about respect, and someone disrespected them. Drop of blood, the first retaliation. One of the warehouse lookouts is found dead, tortured. A message carved into his chest. Where is our money? Suddenly it's not just about greed. It's about survival. Danny realizes the mistake. JD insists they stay calm. But Desi isn't guessing. She's investigating. And she knows law enforcement was involved. Magnifying glass tilted left, Internal Affairs gets involved. At the same time, Internal Affairs starts asking questions. Not about the money yet. About inconsistencies in reports. Why was the warehouse empty? Why were there no body cams recovered? Why did radio logs cut out for 12 minutes? Pressure builds. Danny begins cracking. JD doubles down. Rodriguez panics. Shin starts secretly recording conversations. Trust begins to fracture. Bomb the explosion, betrayal. Desi kidnaps someone close to one of the officers. Not to kill. To send a warning. She offers a deal. Return the money. Or we dismantle you piece by piece. JD refuses. He says, we can't return it. That makes us guilty. Danny wants to fix it. Rodriguez wants out. Shin quietly contacts a federal agent. And this is where everything spirals. Cross swords the turning point. One night, JD meets secretly with Desi. He offers a partial return. But Desi doesn't want money anymore. She wants names. She wants the cops who stole from her. JD lies. Desi knows. And in a brutal confrontation, JD barely escapes an assassination attempt. Now the cartel is hunting them. And Internal Affairs is circling. They're trapped between two predators. Broken heart brother versus brother. Danny confronts JD. He realizes JD never intended to split evenly. JD has been siphoning extra funds. Using offshore accounts. Danny feels betrayed. JD fires back. Don't pretend you're better. You took it too. This is the emotional core of the movie. Two friends. One decision. No way back. Firecracker final act. Everything burns. Internal Affairs obtains financial evidence. Shin flips. Fully cooperating with federal investigators. Rodriguez is killed in a staged cartel hit. Danny realizes. This was never about money. It was about ego. JD tries to flee the country. Danny tracks him down at a marina. The same boat JD bought with the stolen money. Sirens in the distance. Helicopters above. Cartel closing in. JD begs Danny to run with him. Danny refuses. We were supposed to protect people. Gunshots erupt. Cartel assassins open fire. Danny and JD fight side by side like old times. For a moment, they're brothers again. But JD is shot. Fatally. He dies in Danny's arms. Not as a hero. Not as a villain. Just as a man who made one terrible choice. Ice Cube, the aftermath. Danny turns himself in. Confesses everything. The money is partially recovered. Desi disappears into the shadows. Internal Affairs shuts down the department's narcotics division. The final scene shows Danny in prison. His son visits him. There's no dramatic speech. Just silence. Then Danny says, one decision. That's all it takes. Cut to black. Performing arts themes explained. Keycap 1 corruption is incremental. No one starts evil. It begins with justification. Keycap 2 brotherhood can be dangerous. Blind loyalty destroys accountability. Keycap 3 greed isn't about money. It's about feeling owed. Clapperboard final thoughts. The rip isn't about crime. It's about that moment when you convince yourself. No one will know. And how that lie unravels everything. If you enjoyed this full breakdown, comment below.
Guys, now we are not breaking down the story. Now we are breaking down the full cast of this movie. We are diving deep into the cast of the RIP 2026. Their birth, upbringing, career journey, personal life, hobbies, struggles, and what makes them who they are. This is a complete, detailed character and actor breakdown in. Now, Matt Damon role Lieutenant Danny Mellon. Early life and birth. Matt Damon was born on October 8, 1917 in Cambridge, in Massachusetts, USA. He grew up in a middle class family. His mother, Nancy Charlson Peake, was a professor of early childhood education. His father, Kent Damon, worked as a stockbroker and real estate agent. When Matt was just 2 years old, his parents divorced. He was raised mainly by his mother alongside his older brother Cale. Growing up in Cambridge had a huge influence on him. He attended Cambridge Prince and Latin school, where he met someone who would later become one of the most important people in his life, Ben Affleck. Education and early passion. Damon attended Harvard University, majoring in English. While at Harvard, he wrote an early version of what later became Good Will Hunting as part of a class assignment. Education and early passion. Damon attended Harvard University majoring in English. While at Harvard, he wrote an early version of mm, later became Good Will Hunting as part of a class assignment. He dropped out before graduating to pursue acting full time, a risky decision that eventually paid off. A career break though. His big break came with Good Will Hunting 1997, which he co-wrote. He co-wrote Ben Affleck the film on the Academy Award for best Academy Award for best original screenplay, best original screenplay, best original screenplay. From there, Damon became one of Hollywood's most respected actors, starring in the Bourne series, The Martin, Interstellar, The Departed. He built a reputation for playing intelligent, emotionally layered characters, which makes him perfect for Lieutenant Dan in the RIP. Personally, Matt Damon married Lucina Barroso in 2005. They have children together and live relatively private lives compared to many Hollywood stars. He is known for avoiding major scandals and maintaining a stable public image. Hobbies and interest. A poker, he trained with the professional for the film rounders. Philanthropy, a co-founder of Water.Original, the writing and producing, a basketball fan. Damon enjoys keeping his life grounded despite fame. Ben Affleck role GD Brain early life and childhood. Ben Affleck was born on August 15, 1972 in Berkeley, California, but grew up in Mas. His mother was a school teacher and his father had various jobs including playwright and social worker. Affleck showed interest in acting early and appeared in previous educational programs as a child. Friendship with Matt Damon. Ben met Damon in school. They became close friends and struggled together as young actors. Their friendship became legendary after they won the Oscar together for Good Will Hunting. Affleck has had a dynamic career, both high and lows. Major films include Argo, which he directed and starred in, Gone Girl, The Town, Batman in the DCEU. He has won multiple awards, including Academy Awards. Ben Affleck has openly discussed struggles with alcoholism. He has gone through rehabilitation and public divorce, including from Jennifer Garner and later Jennifer Lopez. His personal battles have made him more reflective, and that depth shows in serious roles like J.D. Barney in the R.I.P. Hobbies and interest. Poker won a major California poker tournament. Screenwriting, political activism, film directing. Affleck enjoys being behind the camera as much as front of it. Sasha Calle role Desi Alvarez. Birth and background. Sasha Calle was born on August 7, 1995 in Boston. She is Colombian descent. She moved to Colombia during childhood before returning the US to pursue acting. Education. She studied at American Musical and Dramatic Academy in Los Angeles. Her early training focused heavily on stage performance and emotional range. Career breakthrough. Sasha gained major recognition playing a Supergirl in The Flash 2023. She became the first Latina actress to portray Supergirl in a major DC film. Her casting was historic. Acting style. She brings intensity, emotional power, and controlled aggression, which makes her role as cartel strategist Desi Alvarez in the RIP incredibly powerful. Her hobbies in the singing, dancing, fitness training, traveling. She often shares motivational messages with fans. Teyana Taylor, role detective Numa Rodriguez, born December 10, 1919 in Harlem, New York, raised by a single mother who strongly supported her artistic dramas music career. Tana first became famous as a singer, songwriter, and dancer. She worked with Kenya West and other major artists. Her music blends R&B, soul, and hip hop. Acting career: she transitions into acting with critically acclaimed performances in films like 1001. She known for emotional raw and grounded characters. Hobbies and interests: choreography, fashion design, fitness, and dance. Directing music videos, she multi-talented and creative across industries. Steven Yeun, Detective Mike Shin, born December 21, 1983, in Seoul, South Korea. His family immigrated to the United States when he was young. He grew up in Michigan. He studied physiology and Kalamazoo College. Originally, he did not plan to be an actor. He discovered improv comedy in college, which changed his life. He became globally famous as Glenn in The Walking Dead. Later, he received an Oscar nomination for Minari, becoming the first Asian American nominated for Best Actor. Personality and hobbies: improvisational comedy, farming. He once owned property in California. Cooking Korean food, producing independent films. He known for humility and intelligence. Scott Adkins, role a tactical officer in the RIP, born June 17, 1976 in Sutton Coldfield, England. He developed interest in martial arts age 10. A martial arts background: Adkins trained in taekwondo, kickboxing, judo, karate, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. His physical discipline made him major action star. Career: he became famous for action films and his role as Yuri Boyka in the Undisputed series. Known for high intensity fight choreography. Hobbies: martial arts training, gym and fitness, action choreography, family time. The RIP being together. Beaten dramatic legends Damon and Affleck, rising powerhouse talent Sasha Calle, multi-industry artist Teyana Taylor, Oscar-nominated performer Steven Yeun, elite action star Scott Adkins. This mix of experience, educational depth, and physical intensity makes the film powerful. If you went, I can now. The RIP is not just another crime thriller about corrupt cops and stolen money. On the surface, it looks familiar. A high stakes narcotics raid, a hidden stage of cash, and a group of officers who make one terrible decision. But beneath that familiar setup lies a slow burning character study about morality, ego, brotherhood, and physical cost of corruption. This review will break down the film from every angle: story structure, performance, direction, cinematography, themes, pacing, emotional impact, strengths, weakness, and overall verdict. Story and narrative structure. At this core, the RIP follows a classic three-act structure. A temptation, a routine police raid uncovers 18 million in unmarked surreal money. Instead of reporting it, the officers decide to split it. In consequence, the Sartle realizes the money is gone. Internal affairs notice inconsistencies. Suspension grows inside the team. Act 3 Collapse. Trust breaks, loyalty dissolves, violence escalates, the brotherhood at the center implodes. While the premise is not groundbreaking, the execution is deliberate and physiological rather than explosive. The film does not rely heavily on shoutouts early on. Instead, it builds tension through silence, glances, and moral discomfort. This makes the RIV feel less like an action thriller and more like a character driven crime drama. Performance Matt Damon, Moral Center. Matt Damon delivers one of the most restrained performance in recent years. His portrayal of Lieutenant Dan Mellon feels eternal, layered, and high quality conflicted. He plays he plays a man who convinces himself he deserves something more. The brilliance of his performance lies in subtlety. The hesitation before agreeing to the theft, the sleepless nights, the guilt hidden behind stoic professionalism. Damon carries the emotional weight of the film. Ben Affleck, charisma and corruption. Ben Affleck plays Jerry Byrne with magnetic confidence. Jerry is not cartoonishly evil. He persuasive, rational, convincing. That's what makes him dangerous. Affleck brings leadership energy to the role. When he talks about being odd, you understand why others follow him. His chemistry with Damon feels authentic, likely strengthened by their real life history. The final act confrontation between the two is the emotional peak of the film. Sasha Calle, the silent predictor. Sasha Calle portrayal of Deshi Alvarez is silly. She does not scream. She does not overreact. She controls every scene she is in. Her performance relies heavily on eye contact, on calculated speech. She represents organized power, a force that moves quickly but decisively. She elevates the subtle antagonist from stereotype to strategic mastermind. Teyana Taylor adds emotional realism as Detective Rodriguez. Her fear feels authentic. She represents the officer who knows it's wrong but feels trapped. Stephen Yeun brings complexity as machine over observant, intelligent, and calculating. His gradual shift toward self-preservation is one of the film's strongest subplots. Direction and tone. The direction focuses heavily on atmosphere. The film uses muted color grading, long silence, nighttime cityscape, slow tension, building sequence. Instead of fast editing, it chooses lingering discomfort. This stylistic choice may divide audience. Those expecting non-stop action may find it slow. Those who appreciate physiological crime dramas will find it immersive. The tone feels closer to films like Heat, The Departed, Prisoners. It's heavy, serious, morally grey. Cinematography and visual style. Visually, the RIP emphasizes contrast. A bright daylight during the raid, the dark shadow, heavy scenes after the theft, a close up shots dominate conversations, forcing a viewer to sit with characters expression. Water immigration appears repeatedly. Boats, dogs rain softly, symbolizing guilt that cannot be washed away. The marina final is particularly striking, blending flashing police lights with ocean darkness to create visual shows, sound design, and music. The soundtrack is minimal. Instead of loud orchestral scores, the film uses low bass tension hums, distance, sirens, silence. Silence is used as a weapon. Some scenes stressed unforgettable long without music hiding anxiety. When music finally swells during the final confrontation, it feels earned themes and deeper meaning. Greed is not about money. The film argues that corruption begins with entitlement, not poverty. Those officers are not starving, they feel underappreciated. That emotional justification becomes the gateway to this distraction. Brotherhood versus accountability. Danny and Jerry's friendship is the emotional backbone. The film asks, is loyalty still noble when it protects wrongdoing? Blind brotherhood become the catalyst for collapse. The system is flawed. The but choice still matters. The movie sharply criticizes systemic corruption, yet it never excuses the characters. The message is clear: the system may be broken, but decision was still theirs. Passing strength or weakness. This is where opinions may split. The first half moves slowly. Some viewers may find it dragging, others will appreciate the slow burn tension. The final act accelerates dramatically, delivering emotional and physical payoff. If you enjoy character driven crime films, the pacing works. If you prefer high energy thrillers, it may test patience. The final marina sequence hits hard, not because of explosion but because of history. When Danny holds Chetty after he is shot, the weight of decades of friendship is foiled. There's no dramatic redemption, no heroic peace, just a regret. That restraint makes the ending powerful. Strengths: strong lead performance, realistic moral conflict, atmospheric cinematography, physical depth, emotional final act. Weakness: slow pacing in first half, familiar corruption storyline, limited exploration of supporting characters, cartel representative prescriptive would have been expanded. Final verdict: The Arrive is not loud thriller. It is quiet moral implosion. It does not shock you with spectacle. It unsettles you with realism. The film succeeds because it understands something simple but terrifying. Corruption does not start with monsters, it starts with moral people convincing themselves they deserve more. Overall rating of this movie, 8 out of 10. A gripping character driven crime drama elevated by powerful performance and emotional authenticity. So, people, what are you think about this movie? This movie is a action thriller movie, and this movie earned so much for this action, and it's a Ben Affleck movie. Its budget's too high and income so please, so people, you are subscribe this channel for more movie background and reviews. So, uh, in this movie, Ben Affleck acting so beautiful and so professional. He's acting just like a, a Oscar winner. He's acting so beautiful. So subscribe this channel.
What if corruption doesn't begin with greed? What if it begins with exhaustion? What if the most dangerous criminals are not the ones outside the system, but the ones who believe the system owes them something? This is not a story about stolen money. This is a story about the exact moment integrity collapses. This is the anatomy of a bad decision. This is the RIP. The illusion of stability. At the beginning of the RIP, we are introduced to a law enforcement unit that appears disciplined, coordinated, and effective. Lieutenant Dan Malone leads with quiet authority. His team trusts him. His superiors respect him. But beneath the uniform lies fatigue. The film subtly establishes emotional exhaustion before any crime occurs. Danny's home life is distant. J.D. Burns' ambition feels suppressed. Rodriguez carries financial burdens. Shin watches more than he speaks. The raid on the warehouse is not dramatic. It is procedural, professional, routine, until the floor opens. And money, untouched, undocumented, invisible, changes everything. The psychological pivot. There is a powerful psychological concept called moral licensing. It occurs when individuals believe past good behavior justifies future wrongdoing. The officers in the RIP embody this perfectly. They have risked their lives. They have served the city. They believe they are underpaid and overlooked. The money becomes symbolic, not of greed, but of compensation. JD articulates it best. He doesn't say let's steal. He says, this doesn't belong to anyone who will miss it. That framing shifts morality. The moment the team reframes theft as correction, the fall begins. Group corruption dynamics. Corruption rarely happens alone. It thrives in groups. Social psychology shows that responsibility diffuses in collective wrongdoing. In the RIP, no one forces the decision. There is no mastermind. No villain speech. Just silence. And that silence becomes agreement. Each member waits for someone else to object. Danny hesitates. But he does not stop it. And in corruption, hesitation is participation. The invisible enemy. Once the money disappears, the film introduces a new force, retaliation. But the most dangerous enemy is not the cartel. It is paranoia. The cinematography darkens. Conversations shorten. Trust weakens. The film transforms from crime thriller to psychological implosion. Every glance becomes suspicious. Every phone call feels monitored. The money doesn't just buy comfort. It buys fear. Collapse of brotherhood. Danny and JD represent two responses to guilt. Danny internalizes. JD rationalizes. One seeks repair. The other seeks control. Their friendship, once built on trust, becomes transactional. The beauty of the script lies in its restraint. They never scream, "You betrayed me." They slowly drift into opposition, which feels more realistic. Power, ego, ND control. Desi Alvarez, the cartel strategist, is not portrayed as chaotic. She is calculated. She understands something the officers do not. Power is not about money. It is about message. When she retaliates, it is precise. Her goal is not recovery. It is dominance. The officers thought they stole cash. In reality, they stole authority. And authority demands response. Affairs, the mirror. While the cartel hunts externally, internal affairs hunts internally. This dual pressure is brilliant storytelling. One threat represents crime. The other represents consequence. The officers are squeezed from both sides. And that pressure reveals character. Shin becomes strategic. Rodriguez becomes fearful. JD becomes aggressive. Danny becomes conflicted. Corruption does not unify. It isolates. The final confrontation. The marina sequence is symbolic. Water reflects light. But it also conceals depth. Danny and JD stand between law enforcement sirens and cartel assassins. Caught between the world they betrayed and the world they challenged. When JD is shot, the film avoids melodrama. There is no redemption arc. No heroic sacrifice speech. Just realization. The tragedy of the RIP is not death. It is recognition. Too late. RIP is really about. On the surface, it's about stolen cartel money. Underneath, it's about entitlement. The film asks a disturbing question. If good people believe they are owed something, how long before they justify taking it? Corruption in the RIP is not monstrous. It is human. And that is far more unsettling. Final reflection. The most haunting line in the film is not spoken loudly. It is quiet. One decision. That's all it takes. Because the film's true horror is not violence. It is how easy the first step was.
Corruption as contagion. How one decision infects an entire system, the RIP analysis. Opening sequence. Corruption rarely begins with evil. It begins with permission. A glance across a room. A silence where objection should be. A moment where nobody says no. In the RIP, the theft of $18 million is not just a crime. It is an infection. And like any infection, it spreads. Not instantly, not explosively, but gradually, cell by cell. Today, we are not examining a heist. We are examining how one compromised decision contaminates an entire ecosystem. This is not about bad men. This is about fragile systems. Chapter 1. The First Breach. The warehouse moment is the patient zero event. Until that point, the tactical unit operates within institutional boundaries, even if loosely. But when the money is discovered, something subtle happens. The room changes. Nobody orders the theft. Nobody formally votes. Instead, there is a collective hesitation. In sociology, this is known as diffusion of responsibility. Each individual waits for moral leadership. None arrives. And in that vacuum, consensus forms without explicit agreement. The breach is psychological before it is operational. Chapter 2. Normalization of deviation. Once the money is taken, the system does not collapse immediately. It adjusts. This is critical. If wrongdoing caused instant catastrophe, corruption would be rare. But it doesn't. The officers continue working. The department functions. Cases proceed. Nothing visibly implodes. This creates normalization. The deviation from ethics becomes incorporated into routine. They justify. It's a one-time event. It's criminal money. No one got hurt. Deviation becomes precedent, and precedent becomes pattern. Chapter 3. Trust degradation. Systems operate on invisible currency. Trust. When the officers steal the money, they introduce hidden asymmetry. Each now holds shared guilt. Shared guilt creates paranoia. Because trust built on integrity transforms into trust built on silence. And silence is fragile. We see this manifest in a shorter conversations, a defensive tones, a suspicion over small discrepancies, a financial secrecy. The team's cohesion begins eroding, not because of external pressure, but because secrecy destabilizes equilibrium. Chapter 4. Institutional blind spots. The police department does not immediately detect corruption. Why? Because institutions often assume loyalty from high-performing units. Elite teams receive autonomy. Autonomy reduces oversight. Reduced oversight increases opportunity. Opportunity plus rationalization equals risk. The department's structural design unintentionally shields misconduct. This is not villainy at the top. It is systemic vulnerability. High-trust environments require high accountability. Without it, deviation incubates. Chapter 5. External pressure accelerates spread. When the cartel begins investigating, pressure enters the system. Pressure reveals fractures. Stress amplifies mistrust. Now the officers must maintain deception internally while managing threat externally. This dual burden accelerates breakdown. In organizational theory, this is compounding stress load. Systems under ethical strain cannot withstand sustained external threat. The infection metastasizes. Chapter 6. Moral inversion. A fascinating shift occurs midway through the RIP. The officers begin viewing the cartel's retaliation as justification. They would have killed us anyway. We deserve compensation. We're still the good guys. The narrative flips. Instead of feeling guilt, they feel victimhood. This is moral inversion. The wrongdoing becomes self-defense in retrospect. When groups reach this stage, reversal becomes unlikely, because to undo the action requires surrendering the revised moral narrative, and identity resists collapse. Chapter 7. Contagion beyond the core. Corruption does not stay contained within initial actors. Secondary consequences ripple outward. Families feel emotional distance. Department morale shifts. Rumors circulate. Financial anomalies trigger whispers. Even those uninvolved begin sensing instability. Institutional culture absorbs tension. Trust between units weakens. Suspicion spreads laterally. One hidden act begins shaping collective atmosphere. That is contagion. Chapter 8. The Collapse Mechanism. Systems collapse not when corruption exists. They collapse when secrecy exceeds coordination capacity. In the final act, communication fractures completely. The officers stop sharing information. Independent decisions override group strategy. Fear replaces cohesion. The Marina confrontation is not just violent climax. It is systemic implosion. By the time bullets fly, the system was already dead. Violence is merely its visible autopsy. Chapter 9. Structural Lessons. The RIP illustrates several systemic truths. Ethical breaches begin in silence. High-trust teams require strong oversight. Shared guilt destabilizes cohesion. External stress accelerates internal collapse. Rationalization strengthens corruption over time. The theft was not catastrophic because of money. It was catastrophic because it rewired trust architecture. Chapter 10. Comparative Institutional Strength. An uncomfortable contrast emerges. The cartel, though criminal, maintains hierarchical clarity. The police unit, though lawful, fractures internally. The film suggests something unsettling. Structure matters more than moral labeling. An organized immoral system can outperform a disorganized moral one. This is not endorsement. It is observation. Power dynamics do not respect ethical intent. They respond to coherence. Chapter 11. Why systems repeat this pattern. History shows similar breakdowns across sectors. Corporate fraud scandals, military misconduct cases, political corruption rings. The pattern remains consistent. A opportunity, a rationalization, a silence, a normalization, exposure, collapse. The RIP compresses this cycle into one narrative, but the structure is universal. Corruption is rarely explosive at origin. It is incremental, and incremental shifts are harder to detect. Chapter 12. The Psychological Ecology of Corruption. Individuals operate within environments. Environments reward behavior. When the tactical unit takes the money and experiences no immediate punishment, the environment reinforces risk-taking. Short-term gain overrides long-term risk calculation. Humans are wired for immediate reward. Systems must counterbalance this tendency through accountability mechanisms. In the RIP, those mechanisms are insufficient, so the infection spreads unchecked. Chapter 13. The Final Spread. By the end, no one is untouched. Some are dead, some disgraced.
Desi Alvarez. The Architecture of Strategic Power. The RIP Character Analysis. Opening Sequence. Every powerful story has a force that does not shout. It does not rage. It does not panic. It calculates. In the RIP, that force is Desi Alvarez. She is not the loudest character. Not the most physically imposing. Not the most emotionally volatile. And yet, she controls the temperature of the entire film. Today, we are breaking down Desi Alvarez, not as a villain, not as a stereotype, but as a study in strategic dominance. Because Desi is not driven by chaos. She is driven by order. Power without noise. One of the most fascinating aspects of Desi is her restraint. When $18 million disappears from her organization's warehouse, she does not explode publicly. She does not order immediate slaughter. She pauses. That pause is power. Strategic thinkers understand that reaction reveals weakness. Observation reveals advantage. Desi's first move is not violence. It is information. This establishes her psychological foundation. She values intelligence over impulse. In criminal leadership structures, this is rare and dangerous. Because it means retaliation will be precise, not emotional. Emotional regulation as authority. Throughout the film, Desi maintains emotional equilibrium. Even during moments of betrayal discovery. Even during escalating pressure. Her voice remains measured. Her movements deliberate. This is not accidental characterization. Emotionally regulated leaders create psychological imbalance in opponents. When one side reacts loudly and the other remains calm, the calm side appears in control. Control breeds fear. Fear breeds compliance. Desi weaponizes composure. Strategic patience. Many antagonists in crime films are reactive. Desi is not. She studies patterns. She tracks who conducted the raid. Which officers were present. Which financial behaviors shift afterward. Her retaliation unfolds in stages. First, information. Then, intimidation. Finally, confrontation. Each stage escalates deliberately. She does not rush because rushing risks miscalculation. Her patience communicates certainty. She behaves like someone who knows time is an asset. That patience destabilizes the officers. Because they expect immediate violence. Instead, they receive psychological pressure. And uncertainty is more destabilizing than bullets. Intelligence networks. Desi does not operate alone. Her power is distributed through networks. Informants. Financial trackers. Corrupt insiders. Community whispers. The film subtly shows her reliance on decentralized information flow. This is critical. Centralized leaders who depend only on direct orders are vulnerable. Desi builds layered awareness. This suggests high cognitive strategic capacity. She anticipates. She cross-references. She validates before acting. Her strength is not brutality. It is clarity. Leadership style. Desi's leadership model is not based on fear alone. It is based on predictability. Her subordinates know. If they perform, they are protected. If they betray, they are eliminated. Consistency builds internal loyalty. Even within criminal enterprises, predictability stabilizes hierarchy. She does not appear impulsively violent toward her own organization. This suggests disciplined governance. The officers assume cartel leadership equals chaos. Desi proves otherwise. She represents structured illegality. And structured illegality is far more dangerous than reckless crime. Moral framework. Desi does not view herself as villain. She operates within a different moral framework. In her system, loyalty is sacred. Breach is unforgivable. Territory is identity. Reputation is survival. When the officers steal the money, they violate not just finances. They violate order. Her retaliation is not personal vengeance. It is enforcement of structure. This reframing shifts perspective. From her viewpoint, she is restoring equilibrium. The officers disrupted balance. She corrects it. A psychological warfare. Before physical confrontation, Desi destabilizes the officers psychologically. Surveillance presence. Unexplained disappearances. Subtle intimidation. She creates an atmosphere of inevitability. The officers begin suspecting one another. They fracture internally. Desi understands a powerful truth. You don't need to destroy enemies externally if they destroy themselves internally. Her strategy accelerates internal collapse. She applies pressure and weights. Gender and power subversion. Desi's portrayal subtly challenges expectations. Crime narratives often depict male-dominated hierarchies. Desi commands without exaggerated aggression. She does not overcompensate. She does not mimic stereotypical masculinity. Her authority is quiet. And that quiet confidence disrupts traditional power expectations. Her dominance is intellectual and strategic rather than physical spectacle. This makes her more unsettling. Because her strength is not theatrical. It is controlled. The Marina confrontation. By the time the final confrontation occurs, Desi has already won psychologically. The officers are fractured. Trust is broken. Strategy inconsistent. Fear pervasive. The marina setting symbolizes isolation. Water surrounding. Limited exits. Constrained mobility. Desi chooses environments carefully. She eliminates variables. Her presence during the confrontation is not frantic. It is final. She moves as someone concluding a calculation. Disappearance. After the violence, Desi disappears. No dramatic monologue. No overexposure. This is narratively significant. True power does not linger for applause. It exits once objective is achieved. Her goal was restoration of dominance, not spectacle. And once achieved, she withdraws. Ambiguity strengthens her myth. Legends grow in absence. Strategic strengths. Desi's profile reveals key attributes. A high emotional regulation. A strategic patience. A structured leadership. A distributed intelligence reliance. A consistent internal enforcement. A psychological warfare proficiency. She does not overextend. She does not expose vulnerability. Her greatest strength is timing. Contrast with Danny Malone. Danny reacts. Desi observes. Danny escalates emotionally. Desi escalates structurally. Danny fears disgrace. Desi fears instability. Their conflict is not just legal versus criminal. It is reactive versus strategic. And in high-stakes conflict, strategy often outlasts reaction. What Desi represents. Desi symbolizes something uncomfortable. Competent antagonism. She is not chaotic evil. She is organized power. The film subtly suggests that systems built on discipline, even illegal ones, can outperform fractured lawful institutions. Desi's presence forces viewers to confront complexity. She is dangerous not because she is cruel. She is dangerous because she is competent. Closing reflection. Desi Alvarez does not scream. She does not boast. She does not justify herself. She enforces. Calmly. Strategically. Decisively. In The Rip, she represents the cold architecture of power, the kind that does not need validation. And perhaps the most unsettling truth is this. The officers believed they were exploiting a criminal system. But they miscalculated its structure. Desi did not act out of anger. She acted out of design. And design is far harder to defeat than rage. Brotherhood Under Fire. The emotional collapse inside The Rip. Opening scene. Emotional documentary tone. There is something more dangerous than greed. It's loyalty. Because greed makes you selfish. But loyalty can make you blind. The Rip is not a story about stolen money. It is a story about two men who trusted each other more than they trusted the world. And how that trust became their destruction. This is not about crime. This is about brotherhood, under fire. Chapter 1. Before the money. Before the warehouse. Before the hidden floor. Before the decision. There were two young officers. Danny Malone and J.D. Byrne didn't just work together. They grew up together. The film subtly hints at shared history, academy training, early patrol shifts, shared locker room jokes. They survived dangerous raids. They covered for each other's mistakes. They celebrated promotions together. In police culture, partnership isn't just professional. It's intimate. Your partner is the one who enters buildings with you. The one who stands next to you when bullets fly. That bond is deeper than most friendships. And that depth is what makes the fall devastating. Chapter 2. The Unspoken Masculinity Code. The Rip explores a subtle but powerful theme. Men in uniform are not trained to express fear. They are trained to suppress it. Danny carries financial stress silently. JD carries ambition silently. Rodriguez carries anxiety silently. Shin carries doubt silently. The team dynamic is built on strength, not vulnerability. And when the money appears, no one says, "I'm scared." Instead, they say, "We deserve this." That sentence is armor. But armor cracks under pressure. Chapter 3. The Moment of Influence. When JD suggests keeping the money, he does not command. He persuades. That persuasion is built on years of trust. If a stranger had suggested it, Danny would have refused immediately. But JD isn't a stranger. He is the man who once pulled Danny out of gunfire. Trust transforms suggestion into possibility, and possibility into action. The decision wasn't about money. It was about believing the man beside you. Chapter 4: Loyalty versus Integrity. After the theft, the film shifts tone. Conversations shorten. Eye contact lingers. Silence grows. Danny begins questioning the decision internally. But he doesn't confront JD immediately. Why? Because loyalty feels heavier than morality. If he exposes JD, he destroys decades of friendship. If he stays silent, he betrays his oath. The film never simplifies this choice. It shows the weight of it. Chapter 5: Pressure changes people. The cartel retaliation introduces fear. And fear reveals character. JD becomes aggressive. Danny becomes withdrawn. Rodriguez becomes unstable. Shin becomes calculating. This is where the brotherhood fractures. JD believes doubling down shows strength. Danny believes repairing damage shows strength. Two definitions of masculinity collide. Neither man says, "I was wrong." Pride replaces dialogue. And pride accelerates collapse. Chapter 6: The Psychological Distance. There is a scene midway through the film where Danny and JD sit in silence at a bar. Years ago, that silence would have been comfortable. Now it is suffocating. The camera lingers on physical space between them. The director visually shows what dialogue doesn't. They are no longer aligned. Brotherhood doesn't end with betrayal. It erodes. Slowly. Painfully. Chapter 7: Betrayal without words. When Danny discovers JD has been skimming extra money, it isn't explosive. There is no dramatic fight scene. Just disappointment. That disappointment is worse. Because betrayal from an enemy hurts. But betrayal from a brother reshapes your identity. Danny realizes something devastating. The man he trusted most trusted him less. That imbalance destroys him internally. Chapter 8: Violence as Regression. In the final act, when cartel assassins attack at the marina, Danny and JD fight side by side again. For a brief moment, they are back to who they were. Instinct takes over. Training returns. Coordination is seamless. It's almost nostalgic. But nostalgia cannot undo consequence. When JD is shot, the symbolism is clear. The brotherhood dies with him. Not because of the bullet, but because of the decision weeks earlier. Chapter 9: The Real Tragedy. The tragedy of the rip is not that JD dies. It's that Danny survives. He must live with memory. Live with guilt. Live knowing one conversation could have changed everything. The film doesn't glorify their friendship. It questions it. Was it loyalty? Or dependency? Was it strength? Or emotional avoidance? Chapter 10: What Brotherhood Means. The final prison visit scene is quiet. Danny's son looks at him differently. The cycle of male silence threatens to repeat. The film ends without resolution. Because real-life emotional collapse doesn't resolve cleanly. It lingers. The rip ultimately suggests brotherhood without accountability becomes corruption, and loyalty without honesty becomes destruction.
The ethics of power, authority, accountability, and institutional failure in the RIP. Opening frame. Institutional tone. Power does not corrupt. Unsupervised power does. In the RIP, the central crime is not theft. It is the breakdown of oversight. It is the exposure of how systems fail when accountability becomes procedural instead of moral. This is not a story about individual weakness. It is a study of institutional fragility. This is the ethics of power. Chapter 1: The Structure of Authority. Law enforcement operates on layered trust. Public trusts police. Police trust command. Officers trust partners. Command trusts internal reporting systems. The warehouse raid in the RIP exposes a fracture in Level 3, partner trust, which cascades upward and downward. The money is discovered during an official operation. This means the chain of custody exists. The radio logs exist. The body cameras exist. The paperwork exists. Yet the theft succeeds, not because of brilliance, but because institutional systems assume honesty. That assumption becomes the vulnerability. Chapter 2: Procedural Integrity versus Moral Integrity. The officers in the RIP do not immediately destroy evidence. They manipulate procedure. They delay reports. They frame documentation strategically. They exploit bureaucratic gaps. This distinction matters. They remain inside the system while violating it. This is realistic institutional corruption. It does not reject structure. It uses structure. The film demonstrates how ethical erosion happens within compliance frameworks. Forms are filled out. Reports are submitted. But truth is altered. The danger lies in the illusion of normalcy. Chapter 3: The Role of Internal Affairs. Internal affairs is not portrayed as heroic. It is procedural, slow, methodical, reactive. This portrayal is significant. Institutions rarely detect corruption immediately. They detect anomalies, missing timestamps, inconsistent asset declarations, minor discrepancies. The film highlights a critical truth. Institutions respond to irregularity, not morality. By the time irregularity surfaces, damage is underway. Chapter 4: The Myth of Bad Apples. A common phrase in institutional defense is, "It's just a few bad apples." The RIP challenges this idea. The entire unit participates. Silence is participation. Hesitation is participation. Non-reporting is participation. The system did not fail because of one corrupt officer. It failed because group cohesion overpowered individual conscience. The institution trusted collective integrity. The collective failed. Chapter 5: Incentive Structures. The film subtly critiques incentive imbalance in law enforcement. High risk, public criticism, financial limitations, political oversight pressure. When JD argues they are owed, he is referencing systemic undervaluation. This does not justify the theft, but it explains the psychological leverage point. Institutions that demand sacrifice without perceived reciprocity create vulnerability to rationalization. Ethics weaken where resentment grows. Chapter 6: Cartel as Counter-Institution. The cartel in the RIP operates with its own structure. Clear hierarchy, immediate retaliation, decisive enforcement, zero ambiguity in consequence. Ironically, their institutional response is faster than internal affairs. This contrast is intentional. It exposes a paradox. Criminal organizations often enforce internal discipline more aggressively than legal institutions. The cartel does not tolerate theft. The police department assumes compliance. Assumption creates delay. Delay creates exposure. Chapter 7: Surveillance and Transparency. Body cameras and digital logs exist in the film, but they are not infallible. Technology records events. It does not interpret intent. The officers exploit timing. They exploit blind spots. They exploit trust in routine. The film suggests transparency tools are only as strong as the culture surrounding them. If culture prioritizes loyalty over integrity, tools become symbolic. Chapter 8: Collapse of Command Authority. As suspicion rises, leadership hesitates. Command does not immediately suspend the unit. It waits for confirmation. Institutional inertia is realistic. Organizations fear scandal. They fear public loss of trust. This hesitation worsens impact. By the time enforcement escalates, violence has already occurred. The film subtly critiques bureaucratic delay in crisis response. Chapter 9: Personal Ethics versus Professional Oath. Each officer swore an oath, but oath without reinforcement becomes ceremonial. The film asks, what sustains ethical behavior when supervision is absent? Fear of punishment, personal morality, peer accountability. In the RIP, peer accountability fails first. Without internal correction, external correction becomes inevitable. And external correction is always harsher. Chapter 10: Public Trust as Collateral Damage. When the narcotics division collapses, the real loss is not careers. It is credibility. Public trust erodes quietly. The film avoids dramatic protests or media montages. Instead, it shows quiet consequences: division shutdown, internal restructuring, career termination, criminal charges. Institutional collapse is administrative, not cinematic. And that realism is powerful. Chapter 11: Ethical Takeaway. The RIP ultimately argues, institutions do not collapse from outside attack. They weaken from internal compromise. Corruption is rarely explosive at first. It is incremental, procedural, quiet. By the time it becomes visible, the ethical foundation has already fractured. The film does not condemn law enforcement broadly. It warns about complacency within power structures. Power requires constant oversight, not because all individuals are corrupt, but because all individuals are human. Closing reflection. The final image of Danny in prison is not symbolic of justice alone. It represents institutional reset, a system correcting itself after failure. But the cost was immense. A dead officer, destroyed careers, public trust damaged, families shattered. The ethics of power demand vigilance. The RIP is not about stealing money. It is about what happens when authority assumes itself immune. And immunity is always temporary. The economics of crime, money, risk, and power markets in the RIP. Opening frame, economic tone. Every crime is a calculation, not always written down, not always conscious, but always present. Risk versus reward. Short-term gain versus long-term exposure. Liquidity versus traceability. In the RIP, the central event, the discovery of $18 million, is not simply temptation. It is a market opportunity. And like all market opportunities, it comes with volatility. This is not just a crime story. This is a case study in underground economics. Chapter 1: The Value of Unregistered Capital. The money discovered in the warehouse is unregistered, unmarked, unreported, unclaimed. In financial terms, this is off-ledger liquidity. It exists outside taxation, outside tracking systems, outside legal ownership. That is precisely what makes it dangerous. Unregistered capital has three properties. It cannot be claimed legally. It cannot be invested openly. It cannot be defended publicly. The officers do not steal money from a bank. They intercept black market liquidity. This distinction matters, because the owner of that liquidity, the cartel, will not file a police report. They will retaliate. Chapter 2: Risk Assessment Failure. When JD proposes keeping the money, he frames the risk as minimal. His argument rests on three assumptions. No official documentation links the warehouse to assets. The cartel cannot prove police involvement. Internal reporting systems will not detect irregularity. Each assumption contains a flaw. Economic crime often fails because of underestimated exposure variables. The officers calculate visible risk. They ignore invisible risk. Invisible risk includes informants, digital footprints, internal suspicion, cartel intelligence networks, lifestyle inflation detection. Their model is incomplete, and incomplete models collapse. Chapter 3: Distribution and Incentive Structures. The money is divided evenly. On paper, equal distribution minimizes internal resentment, but equal division does not eliminate asymmetry. Each officer has different financial stressors, different spending habits, different psychological tolerance for risk. Economic theory teaches that shared illegal gain does not guarantee shared silence. Individuals with higher risk aversion break first. In the RIP, this proves true. Fear becomes the inflationary pressure that destabilizes unity. Chapter 4: Cartel Capital Theory. The cartel's money is not idle wealth. It is operational capital. It funds supply chains, bribes, logistics, enforcement, territory control. Stealing operational capital disrupts criminal infrastructure. This is why retaliation is swift. To the officers, it was found money. To the cartel, it was liquidity required for dominance. Criminal organizations treat money as power multipliers. Losing 18 million is not loss of luxury. It is loss of leverage, and leverage must be restored through force. Chapter 5: Lifestyle Inflation Risk. After the theft, subtle behavioral shifts occur. A new boat, foreign transfers, investment restructuring. These actions trigger a common economic detection mechanism: lifestyle discrepancy analysis. In real-world corruption investigations, sudden spending changes expose hidden income. The officers underestimate this. They believe gradual movement equals invisibility. But digital finance tracks patterns, not just amounts. The more they move money, the more they create data trails. Chapter 6: Internal Market Collapse. Once suspicion enters the group, economic logic fractures. Trust is currency. When trust devalues, cooperation collapses. One officer begins recording conversations. Another seeks partial exit strategies. Another considers cooperation with authorities. The internal black market disintegrates. What was once shared profit becomes personal liability. Economic alliances without legal protection are fragile. There are no contracts, no arbitration, no insurance. When instability rises, participants defect. Chapter 7: The Cost of Enforcement. The cartel's retaliation is economically rational. Violence, in criminal markets, is regulatory enforcement. It sends signal value. Signal value restores deterrence. If theft goes unanswered, other actors may challenge authority. Therefore, retaliation is not emotional. It is strategic signaling. Violence becomes investment in reputation. In underground markets, reputation equals survival. Chapter 8: Legal System as Ultimate Regulator. When internal affairs intensifies investigation, a larger regulatory body enters the equation. Unlike cartel enforcement, legal enforcement removes liberty. Prison becomes economic nullification. Danny's final imprisonment represents total asset freeze. Career eliminated. Income terminated. Reputation destroyed. Freedom removed. The officers calculated financial reward. They failed to calculate existential cost. Chapter 9: The Real Market Lesson. The core economic message of the RIP is simple. Illegal markets lack protection. In legal markets, contracts manage risk. In illegal markets, violence manages risk. The officers entered an illegal market without accepting its rules. They assumed immunity because of badge authority. But black market economics does not recognize institutional titles. Once they stole cartel liquidity, they became market participants. And in that market, retaliation is predictable. Chapter 10: Opportunity Cost. Opportunity cost measures what is sacrificed for a decision. By stealing the money, the officers sacrificed long-term pension stability, career advancement, family security, personal freedom. They exchanged sustainable income for volatile windfall. Short-term liquidity replaced lifetime earnings. This is poor economic strategy. High risk, high visibility, no exit plan. The windfall was never sustainable. Chapter 11: The Paradox of Greed. Interestingly, the officers were not extremely wealthy before the theft. They were stable, middle-class professionals with pensions. Their dissatisfaction was psychological, not economic, which reveals the paradox. Greed is rarely about survival. It is about comparative status. JD's language reveals envy toward political corruption and higher-ranking officials. Resentment fuels irrational risk-taking. Emotion disrupts economic logic. Chapter 12: Collapse of the Underground Portfolio. By the final act, every officer faces negative return. One dead, one imprisoned, one cooperating under threat, one career destroyed. The 18 million does not multiply. It evaporates. The portfolio fails. Crime promised exponential growth. It delivered total loss. Closing economic reflection. The RIP demonstrates a fundamental financial truth. If the risk cannot be insured, the reward must be extraordinary. But when the risk includes cartel retaliation, federal prosecution, internal betrayal, digital tracking, no sum is worth it. The officers mispriced danger, and markets punish miscalculation. This is not just a crime drama. It is a financial cautionary tale. In every illegal transaction, someone calculates wrong. In the RIP, that someone wore a badge. Inside the cartel mind, strategy, retaliation, and power doctrine in the RIP. Opening intelligence brief. Power is not measured by money. Money is replaceable. Power is measured by fear. In the RIP, when $18 million disappears from a warehouse, the loss is not financial. It is symbolic. A criminal organization does not fear bankruptcy. It fears weakness. This is not a story about stolen cash. This is a study of how power responds to challenge. Welcome to the Cartel Doctrine. Chapter 1: The Structure of Illicit Authority. Cartels operate on hierarchical discipline. Every warehouse, every shipment, every dollar, tracked internally, not through legal accounting, but through loyalty chains. The warehouse in the RIP was not random storage. It was controlled liquidity, designed for bribery distribution, operational expansion, territory leverage, emergency liquidity. When the money vanishes, the first conclusion is not theft. It is breach, and breach threatens the entire network. Chapter 2: Retaliation as Communication. Desi Alvarez does not react emotionally. She analyzes. Her first objective is not revenge. It is clarity. Who moved the money? Who knew about the stash? Who had access? Retaliation begins small. A missing lookout, a tortured informant, a message carved into flesh. In criminal power systems, violence is language. It communicates seriousness. It reestablishes dominance. It discourages imitation. The goal is not rage. The goal is signal strength. Chapter 3: Intelligence Gathering. Unlike law enforcement, cartels rely on informal intelligence webs, paid insiders, corrupt officials, street-level informants, pattern observation, behavioral shifts. The officers believe the lack of paperwork protects them. But cartels don't need paperwork. They observe. Who conducted the raid? Which vehicles were present? Which officers suddenly shift lifestyle? Who avoids certain areas? Information travels socially before it travels digitally. Desi's strategy is patience. Pressure creates cracks. Cracks reveal truth. Chapter 4: The Psychological Hunt. The cartel does not immediately attack the officers. It destabilizes them. Fear is leverage. The cartel understands something law enforcement often underestimates. People collapse under uncertainty. Random intimidation. Silent surveillance. Unpredictable presence. The officers begin turning on each other before direct confrontation. Desi weaponizes anxiety. That is strategic intelligence. Chapter 5: Authority Restoration. When money disappears, the risk is not financial collapse. It is reputational vulnerability. Other criminal factions may interpret silence as weakness. If the cartel fails to respond, it invites challenge. Therefore, retaliation must be visible enough to reinforce dominance. Violence becomes public relations within criminal markets. The objective: restore deterrence. Make the theft cost more than its value. Chapter 6: Negotiation Attempt. When JD attempts negotiation, he misunderstands the hierarchy. He offers partial return. But to Desi, partial compliance equals confession. In criminal doctrine, admitting vulnerability invites expansion of demand. Desi no longer seeks money. She seeks acknowledgement, names, admission, submission. JD refuses full exposure. At that moment, escalation becomes inevitable. Chapter 7: Tactical Escalation. The Marina confrontation is not random chaos. It is tactical enforcement. Location chosen for limited escape routes, water boundaries, psychological isolation. The attack is designed to eliminate instability, but it also serves narrative power. The message to others is clear. Challenge authority, and we will respond decisively. Chapter 8: The cartel's real objective. Interestingly, the cartel never fully recovers the money. Yet after the confrontation, stability returns. Why? Because the message was delivered. The officers are destroyed. The division collapses. Fear is restored. Power systems care less about asset retrieval than dominance reinforcement. The cartel absorbs financial loss, but regains reputational supremacy. That is strategic victory. Chapter 9: Criminal Governance Model. Desi's leadership reveals a governance model. Centralized authority, swift retaliation, clear hierarchy, non-negotiable enforcement. Compare this to the police departments. Bureaucratic hesitation, internal conflict, delayed reaction, fragmented loyalty. Ironically, the cartel's internal discipline appears stronger. This contrast is deliberate. The film forces viewers to confront uncomfortable symmetry between institutions. Both rely on power. Only one enforces it without delay. Chapter 10: The Disappearance. After the Marina event, Desi vanishes. No dramatic arrest. No closure. Because criminal power rarely collapses entirely. It adapts, restructures, relocates. The disappearance is symbolic. The system continues. The officers were temporary obstacles. The organization persists. Chapter 11: Strategic Lessons. From the cartel perspective, the lessons are clear. Protect liquidity aggressively. Respond to breach immediately. Maintain intelligence networks. Use fear strategically. Reinforce dominance publicly. The officers underestimated the response curve. They believed institutional immunity shielded them. But cartel doctrine recognizes no badges, only leverage. Closing reflection. The RIP shows two power systems colliding. One believes in procedure. The other believes in dominance. When the officers steal the money, they unknowingly enter a different governance structure. In that structure, there are no appeals, no internal review boards, no administrative suspension. There is only consequence. Desi Alvarez represents more than an antagonist. She represents the reality that illegal markets self-regulate through force, and once you challenge that regulation, you become expendable. This is not a crime story from the police perspective. It is a power doctrine lesson from the other side. In the end, the cartel does not need to win publicly. It only needs to remain feared. And fear, once restored, sustains authority.
Danny Malone, The Psychological Autopsy of a Corrupted Protector. The RIP Character Study. Opening sequence. Before he stole $18 million. Before the marina. Before the gunfire. Before betrayal swallowed loyalty whole. Danny Malone was a protector. That is the tragedy of the RIP. Because this is not the story of a villain. It is the story of erosion. Today we are dissecting the psychology of Danny Malone, not as a criminal, not as a cop, but as a human being unraveling under pressure. This is not a crime breakdown. This is a psychological autopsy. Making of a protector. Danny did not enter law enforcement for power. He entered for identity. From early in his life, Danny gravitated toward roles that offered structure. Discipline made sense to him. Hierarchy made sense. Clear rules made sense. The badge offered something deeper than authority. It offered moral clarity. In the early years of his career, Danny believed in the system. Not blindly, but sincerely. He was known for controlled aggression, the kind useful in high-risk operations. He was effective. But more importantly, he was respected. Respect became central to his self-worth. And that is the first psychological hinge. Danny's identity fused with external validation. He did not just do the job. He became the job. The erosion begins. Long-term exposure to high-intensity policing environments creates a specific psychological effect. Emotional compartmentalization. Danny learned to suppress reaction. Suppress fear. Suppress doubt. Suppress grief. Over time, suppression becomes default processing. The human nervous system is not built for permanent hypervigilance. It adapts, but at a cost. Danny's relationships outside work began thinning. He didn't know how to decompress. Silence replaced conversation. Alcohol replaced vulnerability. He didn't see himself slipping. Because the performance of strength still functioned. Outwardly, he was solid. Internally, pressure was accumulating. The brotherhood dependency. The tactical unit became Danny's emotional ecosystem. These men were not just co-workers. They were mirrors. Each validated the other's sacrifices. In trauma psychology, this creates closed-loop bonding. Shared risk creates intense loyalty. But it also creates isolation from outsiders. Danny's moral compass increasingly calibrated to the group rather than to abstract law. The team's survival became priority. Procedure became secondary. This shift was gradual. Invisible. But foundational. The warehouse moment. When the team discovers the $18 million, Danny experiences cognitive fracture. There are three immediate psychological reactions visible. Shock. Rationalization. Possibility. Shock is biological. The brain processes magnitude. Rationalization follows instantly. No one will miss it. It's criminal money. It's a victimless act. Then possibility. Possibility is the most dangerous emotion. Because possibility reframes morality as opportunity. Danny's internal conflict is visible in micro-hesitations. He does not immediately advocate theft. But he does not reject it either. And that silence becomes consent. The justification spiral. Once the decision is made, Danny's mind must stabilize it. Cognitive dissonance demands resolution. He reframes the act as correction rather than corruption. He tells himself, "The system underpays us. We've earned this." This balances the scales. The human mind is extraordinarily skilled at protecting self-image. Danny cannot see himself as corrupt. So he rewrites the narrative. He is not stealing. He is reclaiming. This psychological shift is the point of no return. Because once self-image aligns with wrongdoing, reversal becomes humiliation. And humiliation is unbearable for someone whose identity rests on respect. Paranoia emerges. After the theft, Danny changes. Subtle at first. Sleep becomes fragmented. Irritability increases. Trust decreases. He scans faces longer than necessary. He questions casual remarks. He begins anticipating betrayal before it exists. This is not guilt alone. It is exposure anxiety. He knows what he has risked. The brain under sustained secrecy behaves similarly to the brain under threat. Hypervigilance intensifies. Danny becomes sharper operationally, but emotionally unstable. Fracture in brotherhood. The greatest psychological blow is not cartel retaliation. It is internal suspicion. When team members begin doubting one another, Danny's core identity collapses. The brotherhood was his anchor. Without it, he floats. Trust erodes through micro-expressions. Avoided eye contact. Shorter replies. Longer pauses. Danny feels the shift before it is spoken. And this triggers defensive aggression. He becomes more dominant. More controlling. More reactive. Control is his last psychological shield. Fear of exposure. At this stage, Danny is no longer afraid of prison. He is afraid of disgrace. Disgrace annihilates identity. He imagines headlines. Family disappointment. Public humiliation. The fear of being seen as corrupt is worse than the consequences of corruption. This paradox drives escalation. When JD suggests partial negotiation, Danny resists. Compromise implies admission. Admission equals collapse of self-image. He would rather fight than confess. The marina. The final confrontation is psychologically revealing. Danny does not run. He does not attempt surrender. He engages. This is not recklessness. It is identity preservation. If he dies fighting, he remains protector in his own narrative. If he survives exposed, he becomes fraud. The choice is clear in his mind. In the chaos, we see a strange calmness. Because the psychological tension has peaked, outcome no longer matters. Only meaning does. The internal autopsy. If we break Danny down clinically, we see a chronic stress exposure, a identity fusion with profession, a suppressed emotional processing, a group loyalty over institutional ethics, a moral rationalization under opportunity, a escalation driven by shame avoidance. Danny is not uniquely evil. He is structurally vulnerable. Given the same pressures, similar personalities might fracture the same way. That is what makes his story uncomfortable. He is not a monster. He is familiar. Or tragedy. The true tragedy is not the lost money. It is the lost self. Danny began as protector. He ended as threat. But internally, he never stopped believing he was protecting something. His pride. His team. His dignity. The tragedy lies in misaligned protection. He defended the wrong thing. Rip says about identity. The film quietly asks a dangerous question. What happens when a person becomes inseparable from their role? When the badge is removed, what remains? Danny never built identity outside enforcement. So when enforcement morality bent, he bent with it. He had no alternative compass. This is not just about policing. It is about any profession that consumes the self. Military, politics, corporate power. When role equals identity, corruption equals self-defense. Closing reflection. Danny Malone's story is not about greed. It is about erosion. Small compromises. Unprocessed trauma. External validation dependency. Fear of humiliation. The money was catalyst. But the fracture existed long before the warehouse. In the end, Danny dies believing he is still the protector. And that is the final psychological irony. Because the most dangerous transformations are the ones that feel justified from the inside. The Rip does not ask us to hate Danny. It asks us to understand how someone like him falls.